All right, so Nvidia, their latest financials, those 10 Qs for Q1 and Q2 of fiscal year 2025, they really paint a wild picture. 262% revenue growth year over year.
Yeah.
It's insane, driven by all this AI craziness. But looking at these reports, not exactly light reading, is it? We're going to try to break it down, though. See, what's really fascinating is that NVIDIA is right at the tip of this AI wave. So we want to figure out what's fueling their success, what are the potential roadblocks they might hit, and what does all this mean for, well, everyone.
Yeah, these 10 Qs, they're like a sneak peek behind the curtain, They give us a much clearer picture than those yearly reports. For investors, for anyone who wants to really grasp where a company's going. And with NVIDIA, well, the potential is massive. I mean, they're basically supplying the high-octane fuel for the AI engine, right? But like you said, there are some serious challenges, too. Export controls, cutthroat competition, all that jazz.
Right. So huge potential, but maybe some choppy seas ahead. Let's start with the good stuff, this revenue growth. It's mind-blowing. Big jumps year over year and even quarter over quarter. Their Hopper GPU computing platform seems to be a big part of that, especially in their data center business, which is booming. So what makes Hopper so special for AI?
Okay, imagine you're teaching a computer how to, understand language, translate text, even write a poem. You're talking about processing an unbelievable amount of data, right? And that's where Hopper shines. It's designed for these massive AI tasks. Way faster, way more efficient than older tech. It's like going from a bicycle to a spaceship, processing power-wise. That's why their data center business is exploding. They're providing that spaceship to everyone who needs to crunch those mountains of data.
Okay, I get it. So Hopper is the engine powering the AI rocket ship. But even with all that success, their effective tax rate, it's gone up, right? What does that even mean for investors?
Good catch.
Yeah.
That effective tax rate, that tells you how much of a company's profits actually go to, well, taxes. Higher rate, less money for, investing in the future, paying shareholders, all that. Now, NVIDIA's reports, they say this increase is because of changes in how some tax benefits are calculated, specifically deductions for income from intangible assets, the kind they develop in the U.S. but use, overseas. It's complicated. But the point is, investors need to watch these changes. They can really hit a company's bottom line.
Makes sense. Speaking of complicated, the reports also show how tricky it is to operate globally. I mean, NVIDIA, they've got employees all over the map. They use stock options a lot for compensation, plus they have to comply with rules in like Korea, Spain, China. Man, that sounds like a logistical nightmare.
It's a puzzle, for sure. Every piece has its own set of rules. Stock options, they're great to attract and keep the best talent, especially in tech, which is, super competitive. But managing those agreements across borders, different tax laws, labor laws, reporting requirements, it's a constant juggling act. Then you throw in stuff like the war in Ukraine, the Israel-Hamas conflict. NVIDIA specifically mentioned these as affecting them, And it's clear, keeping things running smoothly on a global scale, it's a real challenge.
Yeah, it's like spinning plates while walking a tightrope.
Yeah.
And speaking of challenges, those export controls on advanced chips, right? The reports mention that a lot, especially the impact on China. What's the deal there?
Oh, yeah, that's a big one. Basically, the U.S. government, they've clamped down on selling certain high-performance chips to China. National security, tech competition, you know the drill. Now, China. That's a huge market for NVIDIA, especially for those data center GPUs, the ones fueling the AI boom. So these controls, they're really limiting NVIDIA's ability to sell their top-tier stuff in a crucial market.
So it's not just missing out on sales now, it's potentially falling behind in a key market in the future.
Exactly. They've got some tough choices to make. Do they pour resources into developing chips specifically for China, chips that meet the regulations, but maybe that means less focus elsewhere? Or do they double down on other markets, try to make up the lost ground? It's a dilemma a lot of tech companies are facing, and it raises a bigger question. Do these restrictions, do they actually stifle innovation, globally? In the long run.
Interesting points, like a technological arms race with global consequences. Okay, let's switch gears a bit. What about this capital return program NVIDIA has? They've been buying back their own shares, plus giving out cash dividends to investors. The reports even mention specific amounts, which always catches my eye. What's the thinking behind that?
This is where things get interesting for investors. Share buybacks and dividends. They're ways to reward those shareholders. Buybacks, they basically reduce the number of shares out there, which can bump up the value of the remaining ones. Dividends, those are straight up cash payments to shareholders. Both can be attractive, but they make you wonder about a company's priorities. Are they focused on short-term wins for investors? Or are they investing in, research and development to stay ahead of the game? It's a balancing act for sure.
Right. Keeping investors happy now, but also making sure they're in a good position for the future.
Mm.
Well, we've covered a lot of ground, from Hopper's potential to the headaches of global operations and those export controls. It seems like Nvidia is playing in a pretty intense arena.
You got that right. And the game's just getting started. NVIDIA's story, it's like a microcosm of the AI revolution itself. Tons of potential, but some serious hurdles and question marks along the way. And the fascinating thing is, it goes way beyond just one company, right? These trends, they're going to impact all of us in ways we probably can't even imagine yet.
That's a great point. It feels like we're just at the beginning of this AI journey.
Yeah.
And Nvidia is giving us a front row seat.
Exactly. That's why it's so important to dig deeper, Look past the headlines, understand the forces at work, whether you're an investor, a tech enthusiast, or just someone trying to figure out what the future holds. This is a story worth paying attention to.
It really is amazing how much Nvidia is riding on this whole AI boom. Like they're catching a massive wave, but we've seen there might be some rough waters ahead too. But before we get too doom and gloom, I want to go back to what's driving this crazy demand for their products. What is it about their tech that's making them like the king of the AI hill?
Well, they really get what AI needs to really take off. Think about it, AI, especially the really advanced stuff like those large language models we hear about, it needs to chew through tons of data. Like imagine teaching a computer to spot patterns in a million different pictures of cats, right? It takes serious processing power to do that.
It's like teaching a computer to see, but on a massive scale.
Yeah.
So how does Nvidia fit in?
They've built these GPUs, these graphics processing units, specifically for the kind of calculations AI loves. And their Hopper architecture, like we said before, that's a huge jump in performance and how efficiently it uses power. Plus, they've been smart about partnering up with the big players in the AI world, from research labs to like cloud providers. So they're not just providing the hardware, they're actually shaping how AI is being developed.
So they're not just selling the tools, they're helping build the whole house, kind of. That's pretty cool. But even with all that going for them, we've talked about some pretty big obstacles. Those export controls, for instance, they seem like a real game changer. What could those restrictions mean in the long run for Nvidia and the whole AI landscape?
One big worry is that it could split the global AI market. If companies like Nvidia can't sell their best chips to certain countries, innovation in those places could slow down. And it raises questions about who gets access to this important technology. If AI development gets concentrated in just a few places, it could have huge implications for like economic competitiveness, even national security. It's a knotty problem, that's for sure.
It really shows how intertwined tech and geopolitics are, doesn't it? Like some high-stakes chess match where every move has global ripples.
Exactly. And these challenges, they go beyond just export controls. Remember, NVIDIA operates globally, right? We talked about those stock option headaches internationally. But there's also the whole issue of managing a global workforce and dealing with all these different regulations in every country.
Right. It's like trying to conduct an orchestra, but the musicians are scattered all over the world, and they're all playing by slightly different rules.
That's a great analogy. And these challenges, they're only going to get tougher as AI becomes more mature. We're already seeing governments everywhere trying to figure out how to regulate AI, like the EU's AI Act, for example. These regulations, they aim to tackle important stuff like data privacy and making sure algorithms aren't biased, but they also create new hurdles for companies like Nvidia.
So they're walking a tightrope, aren't they? On one hand, they've got this huge opportunity to lead the AI revolution, but on the other, they're dealing with these geopolitical and regulatory headaches that could really throw them off course.
Yeah.
How do they even balance all that?
It's a constant juggling act, no doubt. They need to be flexible enough to adapt to changing regulations and, the global political landscape, but they also can't lose sight of their long-term goals. And they've got to make sure they're attracting and keeping the top talent in a market where everyone's fighting over the same pool of skilled engineers and researchers.
The stakes are definitely high. But let's talk about the investors for a sec. What are the key things they should be zeroing in on in these financial reports to see how NVIDIA is handling these challenges? Like, what are the warning signs and what are the good signs?
Okay, first off, Investors look at revenue growth. Is it still healthy, or is it starting to taper off? They'll also be looking at profit margins. Are those shrinking because of, say, rising costs or more competition? And they'll be paying attention to how NVIDIA is managing expenses, especially spending on R&D. A company that's serious about winning in the AI game, they need to be putting a lot of money into innovation.
So it's not just looking at the numbers themselves. It's about understanding the bigger trends behind them, right? The ones that could point to future success or maybe some trouble brewing. But it's not all about the numbers, is it? Investors are also trying to figure out how a company is dealing with these broader challenges, like those export controls or the regulatory landscape that keeps shifting.
You got it. They want to see that the company has a solid plan for tackling these complicated issues. Is the leadership team communicating well? Are they investing in the right areas? Are they adapting their products and services to meet the market's changing needs? Investors want to see that the company's thinking ahead, getting ready to succeed in a world that's, constantly changing.
So it's about having a vision for the future, but also being flexible enough to roll with the punches. Sounds like a tough gig.
It is. And that's why it's so interesting to watch companies like NVIDIA navigate all this. They're right at the cutting edge of this technological revolution that's changing the world. And whether they succeed or fail, it's going to have a ripple effect way beyond their own bottom line.
It reminds you that these financial reports, they're not just boring documents full of numbers. They're actually like windows into what's shaping our future. It's a story about innovation and competition and this global race to harness the power of AI. And it feels like we're just at the beginning of the story.
That's what makes it so exciting to dig into these reports, right? We see the wheels turning, the strategies being formed, the bets being placed. It's like watching a high-stakes poker game, but the chips represent the future of technology.
That's a great way to put it, and I think that's a perfect place to pause for a moment. We've got a lot more to uncover, including what it all means for you, our listener. We'll be right back after a quick break. All right, so we've looked at NVIDIA's financials, seen their crazy growth, and talked about those big challenges they're up against. But the big question is, so what? What does all this mean for the folks listening? Why should anyone care about what some tech company is doing, especially if it's like halfway across the world?
Well, NVIDIA's story, it's really a story about what's coming next, a future that's, more and more tied to artificial intelligence. Their GPUs, they're the engines driving this whole AI revolution. From those algorithms that, personalize your newsfeed to those self-driving cars that might be everywhere one day. Understanding NVIDIA, it helps us understand where AI is going and what that might mean for us, for our lives.
So it's not just about investing in some company. It's about getting a handle on a technology that's about to change everything. Yeah. But we've talked about some downsides too, right? It's not all rainbows and unicorns.
Right. Definitely not. AI, it has the potential to solve some of our biggest problems, like curing diseases or fighting climate change. But it also comes with some real risks.
Yeah.
We've already seen AI being used in ways that are, discriminatory, invasive, even dangerous. And as it gets more powerful, those risks, they only get bigger.
So it's like a powerful tool, right?
Yeah.
It can do a lot of good, but it can also be misused. Sounds like we need to be having some serious discussions about making sure AI is developed and used responsibly.
Absolutely. And that's where understanding companies like NVIDIA is even more crucial. They're not just building tech, they're making choices. Choices about what kind of AI to develop, how to minimize the risk, how to work with governments and regulators. If we pay attention to those choices, we can help shape AI's future, make sure it benefits everyone.
So we can't just sit back and watch. We got to be part of the conversation, ask tough questions, and demand that AI is used for good. And that starts with, staying informed, understanding all the complexities, and being aware of the potential downsides.
You got it. NVIDIA's financial performance, it's just one piece of a much bigger puzzle. But by looking at these reports, we've learned about more than just one company. We've gotten insights into a whole industry, how global politics are all tangled up, and what AI could mean for all of us.
It's been a deep dive that's definitely left me with a lot to think about. Hopefully it's done the same for you, my listeners.
And remember, this isn't the end of the road, right? It's a journey. Keep exploring, keep asking questions, and keep working towards the future you want to see.
Well said. That wraps up our deep dive into NVIDIA and the future of AI. Until next time, stay curious.